Good evening. The Design Review Board 2 public meeting of March 3rd, 2011 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. And roll call, Mr. Baladian.
Here.
Mr. Garagos.
Here.
Mr. Malikian.
Here.
Ms. Sakai.
Here.
And Mr. Zarifian is absent. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside of City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on February 24th, 2011. Oral communications. Do you have any cards, Mr. Malikian?
We don't.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on an item that is not a part of this agenda? No. Okay. We are down to the review calendar. Staff announcements. At this point, we don't have any. There is nothing on the consent calendar, so we'll go down to our regular agenda items.
Okay. So we will start with the first item, 2-3283-R. So this is a new DRB number I haven't seen before. The address is 1255 Corona Drive.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This first item before you actually has been reviewed by the Board 2 in the past. However, most of the members on this board probably were not present at that time because it's back in 2003. Maybe Board Member Malikian?
Probably.
Perhaps. I'll have to look at the previous
yeah.
record of decision. In any case, it was approved back in 2003, and they did approve a previous design with condition. I did actually put the plans on the panel behind you, the ones on the far, your right, so that you can kind of glance at them and compare with the most recent submittal to get an idea. Obviously, there's a significant change
Probably
in architecture.
not.
Probably not. Okay. The applicant, again, proposes to completely redesign the architecture of the previously approved project, which is currently under construction, partially constructed the project thus far. Also, the overall height of the building is proposed to be modified to a maximum of height of 32 feet. The modifications do not include an expansion in floor area. However, it has been reduced compared to the previous submittal slightly. For example, the lower floor and the middle floor specifically have been reduced. However, the total area of the house will be 2,111 square feet with the attached 427 square foot garage located at street level. The project primarily consists of exterior modifications. It is located in the R1R zone in the Adams Hill district. If you're familiar with that area, the Adams Hill area is characterized by high-density single-family development. However, the immediate street block on Corona Drive does consist of modern homes built during the mid to late 1960s, with the exception of a few more recently built homes. This area, or this district in particular, is comprised of 2- and 3-story homes that abut the front property line but tear back due to the steep topography of the area. In terms of the site planning, the lot is 7,111 approximately square feet, and it does front two streets that would be Corona Drive to the to the east, and Palmer Avenue, which is below the hill on the west side. The site topography does consist of dramatic downhill sloping terrain with an average current slope of approximately 49.8%. And due to the steepness of the lot, the garage is built at street level facing Corona Drive, and then the remaining 2 stories stepped down according to its topography. However, the home is visible from both Corona and Palmer. And you can actually note that in the photos that are being passed around. The proposed exterior modifications to the design will not change the site plan or footprint of the home, as it was previously approved by the board. The original site planning will remain and is consistent with the general neighborhood pattern and design guidelines. In terms of its mass and scale, the revised design emphasizes its mass and scale and verticality, which is not consistent and complementary to the horizontal nature of the neighborhood. And some examples in terms of the mass and the scale and how it's emphasized. For example, the height of the front entry has been increased compared to the previous design, which again emphasizes its verticality and mass. And what I'll do at this point is approach the board and kind of point out those areas that staff has some comments on. So again, it's this element right in here, the main front entry, and the element next to it. Again, it emphasizes its mass and verticality and does not enhance the design, rather creates more mass along the street facade. Additional modifications to the overall massing would be necessary, especially at the east elevation, since its visibility is prominent and quite close to the street. So staff recommends modifying this front elevation by lowering the height of the front entry tower and its vertical appearance, and consider removing this element feature here to, for example, proposing a trellis that perhaps provides some shade at the deck, and also that is light in appearance. So that's a comment that staff is making as it relates to that particular feature. In the previous design, the mass and scale was respectful of the neighborhood and complemented to the design, and the applicant has made an effort to introduce more contemporary design that is palatable. However, appropriate variety of materials are necessary and needed in order to enhance the design. So as proposed, the design, the use of material, it appears to emphasize, again, the mass, a little more boxy appearance, and of course its scale. And again, for example, in the west elevation, right in here, staff, again, has comments regarding this elevation in particular due to, again, its boxy appearance. Staff kind of compared it in the staff report to somewhat like if you were going to view this from the street below, which is on Palmer, somewhat like an apartment building. And again, we want to kind of not have that design, because it does not, again, enhance this particular building. Again, the doors on that particular elevation, consistent wrapping of reveals, the large fenestration does not, again, overall help reduce the scale of the building. And again, the applicant has made an effort to introduce different forms and volumes as a way of breaking up the building's mass and scale, but again, further modification is necessary. In terms of the building design and detailing, the application and use of materials needs to be refined. The selected material is consistent with contemporary architecture. For example, the fine sand finish plaster, cable railing at the balconies, the horizontal wood treatment on the fascia, the decks and the front entry door, clear anodized windows. These are all selected materials that are consistent with contemporary architecture. The stucco color is appropriate, the medium gray color, for example. In addition, the scored lines with a metal reglet, that particular use as part of the design is appropriate. However, the main concern is the homogeneity of the materials, the consistent wrapping of this particular, or the way it's designed is a concern for staff, and staff actually has noted that again in the staff report. I referenced those comments in the recommendation portion in your staff or section in your report. Staff does recommend return for redesign, again, due to the comments that I've mentioned so far, in particular the mass, the scale, and the design. Do you have any questions for staff?
The original drawings of the west elevation, that's the retaining walls and everything that built to be able to build the building up. It's not shown on the west elevation. Is that something that we should kind of visually attach that bottom piece to that, or are they proposing something different? Or
They're not, to my knowledge, they're not proposing anything different, and that's probably the reason why it's not shown on
Right.
in this more recent design. Again, there is a photo of the rear, and I think that some of the retaining walls, again, but I have not confirmed that because I actually have not conducted a site inspection of neither, obviously, final, but framing, for example, which is the first inspection that would take place by the staff. So, again, I'm not able to confirm all the site walls that were previously approved under the original permit.
May I ask you, maybe I missed the garage door. Do we have, what type of garage door is it?
If they did not submit a cut sheet on the material board, then I don't.
We don't have a garage door design.
panel, all glass,
I know. I mean, it's
not a cut sheet, yeah.
It matches the windows, clear anodized.
okay.
We
Just, okay. I just want to make sure what it is.
And my last question, or if there's any, these conditions that you guys came up with, have you had a chance to review and then go over with the applicant? And
I actually did personally contact the applicant and informed him of staff's recommendation, and my understanding is that he does have a presentation for you and a little rebuttal.
okay. All right. Is it Manzar
Karashi, yes.
Kurashi? Yes.
My turn to speak. I understand
Yes.
I'm limited by time.
You can, if you can state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Munzer Karashi. Address is 2701 West Alameda, Suite 400, Burbank, California.
Please.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to give you a very brief, succinct background. I'm an experienced builder. I've built over 400 homes, 2 of which have won National Design Awards, 4 have been in Architectural Digest. And I'm a guest lecturer at Cal State in Engineering and Design. I'm not an architect like you are, but I have a deep interest in the field. This is my own personal home, so I have a vested interest in it, and I'm experienced at producing architecturally significant properties. Background on this, as Milka was telling you, originally approved in 2003 and has undergone 3 ownership changes without completion, and was designated as a blighted property by the city attorney. The previous owner was in litigation with the city attorney's office for completion. I wanted to make small alterations for my own design purposes, and small is obviously a relative term. Building and Safety originally thought that my changes were minor enough that they would only require verbal approval. But it's 1.5 years later and 3 submissions, and we're still not there.
When you say 3 submissions, to
3.
what? To design review or to building and safety?
To your staff, to your design review staff.
Okay.
But just for direction as to what the design review would like. As stated in the architectural statement, I gave this house as a case study house to the architectural students at Cal State. And so the final result is my own thoughts, my own architect, and Cal State University. The most important criteria they were given was there were to be no structural alterations to the house. So compared to the original, there are no structural changes. Because, number one, it's more efficient, and number 2, I wouldn't have to go back to Building and Safety to review the engineering again. So that was an important consideration. So as such, the new design is completely cosmetic. Internally, the house will incorporate numerous engineering features to make it as close to a zero carbon footprint as possible. But though it's difficult to see, perhaps with the 2, overall, the only design change was the introduction of a deck and increase in vertical dimension of five of the windows. There are no other changes. to the design, as previously approved. And as you know, the first consideration of any site is the site itself, and the unique feature of this property is the view. And the previous design had small fenestrations on the west-facing wall, so the view was not optimized. And so the only changes were those fenestrations were dropped to floor level, and a deck was introduced to allow a person to have a view in that direction. And it didn't incorporate a viewing area, and that was the purpose of the deck that was placed on top. Now, I have rebuttals if you have time to the...
Well, just one, before you start your rebuttal, just a quick question. When you say no structural changes,
Correct.
and you mentioned you're removing the roof over the lower portion, that itself is not a structural change?
Because the structure is sound enough. I've taken it up with building and safety and also the engineer. The structure is already supported. Those balconies are vestigial balconies. They're 18 to 24 inches, just to emphasize the horizontal nature of to avoid that.
And then the window openings that are originally, and I'm assuming, I drove by it and I saw it, and I didn't have that plan with me to compare. Right. I'm assuming that they've actually, the fenestrations on the existing structure was already there. But you're proposing alteration to that, so that's not a structural change?
It's not a structural change because, number one, it impacts less than 25% of the shear wall value, and it is nor the load value. It only goes down another foot.
Okay. All right. I guess you have a rebuttal?
A couple of points.
Rebuttal to, we haven't even started to...
I guess the three main complaints of your staff is, number one, modify the front entrance by lowering the height and its vertical appearance. Consider matching the hipped roof at the garage. I'll be happy to do that. My purpose today is to come to some kind of compromise, and I'm perfectly reasonable because it's been a year and a half I've owned the property, and I want to proceed to build it as quickly as possible. But I could lower the roof and put a hipped roof back, which was the original design, as you'll see. But I think that doesn't complement the contemporary nature of it, nor does it emphasize the horizontal plane that we're trying to emphasize. We did lower it once from the original height that when I first met with Stephanie Reich, she asked me to lower it, and it was done one time already. It can't be lowered too much more because it can only be lowered to the plate height of the garage. And I think that homogeneity won't look good. But that's up to yourselves to approve. Second comment, remove the design feature located at the front facade next to the front entry. Consider an open trellis for shade at the deck that is light in appearance. That was also reduced. Originally, that architectural feature went to the front of the property, and it was pulled back 50% to avoid that massing, so you get a 25-degree. Now, the drawings
we need to quickly wrap it up,
okay.
So if you're going to, please.
I heard the beep. Yes, that was actually, this property is only visible, only the garage is visible from Corona. And that has a purpose in terms of allowing shade, as Milka said. But that can be, I don't mind modifying that as well to a lighter material. The fenestrations on the north and south elevations are exactly the original fenestrations. So they were already approved. All the fenestrations in the house are. So I think that's a subjective thing. My idea was to make the house warm, modern, with linearity and with some homogeneity, and that was the purpose of those things.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
Yeah, question?
Yeah. What is the material of the bend that you have?
Oh, it's
below.
It's in the thing. It's a composite wood material that looks like
composite wood
to avoid fire regulations there. That same.
Oh, you're going to use that for the side?
Yeah, and as well as the deck. Yeah, because we want to continue with some kind of congruous nature to the.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Public session is closed. Anyone wants to start?
Oh, just one.
You want to start?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You go ahead? Okay. I thought it was interesting in a couple different ways, but I think in some ways, the difficulty I have with it is when you look at the older plan, and it's something that bothered me about it previously, and I wasn't sure, and now that I see what the previous approved plan, it had helped to sort of crystallize it in my mind. I think what was there previously, when you're saying you're you're sort of not modifying or slightly cosmetic from what was there previously or approved previously. The other had elements that minimize the impact of the larger wall. And by removing those roof structures and whatnot, you may have the same door or window behind it, but you don't have the kind of elements, three-dimensional elements coming down. And I'm not a big fan of the previous design. I'm just merely saying in terms of massing, there were elements that were used that minimize the impact of that large face. So what you've done is taken those elements off, like the roof structures, the terracing of the roof structures, and essentially you've made a series of bands, which I can understand your wish for the horizontality. I just think you were too literal when you've done them. So it's essentially a layer cake, and I think there's strong, interesting elements. I just think that that's all it is, though, for me. And I think that when you're thinking of that larger wall, I think that works against you. Because I think that those kind of horizontal elements I could understand more if there was a piece of it. I mean, if you thought of it as a composition on that elevation, and if there was a piece of it that was larger or something, and then these intersected, maybe not all the way through, but there was a larger kind of worked together with it, I could understand it. But I think when you just run them continuously on the 3 floors, I think it minimizes the effect. I think it overdoes in the wrong way the effect. And the other thing is, I think that would be helpful, because I was having a lot of difficulty, and it was good that the other plan was here. If you shaded your west elevation, I think you'd understand more. Like that center one on the mid floor, it's like actually an inset patio, right? Then you add a spandrel across.
Which one is terraced?
Right, and I think
You can't have you can
Yeah.
address us, I guess.
it's things like that that would help us to understand it, because that would probably work in your favor, that you understand that was a void and something else was coming out. But by adding the spandrel that you've done above it, again, you're reinforcing the mass of the wall. So I think that's what's working against you on that elevation. In terms of the entry piece, I do think it looks kind of funny that it's sort of proportions in what it's doing. I'd be more inclined to. I don't mind your roof deck. I think the roof deck for me, I think, is fine there. I sort of like that kind of brise soleil feel of that. I probably would add a few more elements to it along, like staff was talking about, so that it actually had a shading component to it. But there's something about that three-dimensionality that would be helpful on that back facade, to kind of give it a little more dimension to it, as opposed to just those balconies that run across. Because unfortunately, it's one of those things. It's been done horribly so many times. It's hard to get away from the fact that how many times, like up on, I don't want to disparage any part of the town, but there are some houses that are done where there's just sort of a layer cake of rows of balconies like that. And as lovely as the Ipe is, there's only so much they can do to counterbalance for just the mass of those elements. So I think it's close, but I personally don't think it's ready yet, because I think it's, and unfortunately you've just spent the time you have on it working with the city, but I sort of hope you were here earlier so that you could have moved faster through the process. So I apologize for the time you spent, but it still needs to kind of pull together in that. I think it's too stark in the sense of the kind of mass it has. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Where to start? Okay. I like it and I don't like the project, but it's a. Let's take it from the beginning. I think it's approved. You can't do much about it. You already have the structure there. Going from the traditional design to trying to do a contemporary design, it's a good direction. But I think what's the problem here? It's fighting is the roof. I think if you had come up with a simpler roof, I know you removed one of them. I think the gable roof above the garage is not working. And I agree totally with the staff comments. The entrance, it's like a tower. The door, 9-foot high door. Let me finish. The door, I think that area needs to be reduced. It's too much verticality. I think by introducing a flatter roof, removing that gable roof out, and and making a simpler roof, maybe play with the couple of lower plateaus, maybe like such as like if you look into like Schindler or Frank Lloyd Wright, how they play with the different types of roofs. That would have been a better product to blend it in with bring in the more contemporary architecture. I know that the project has been approved previously. I'm not that thrilled about the existing window locations. It's kind of out of whack, but we can do much. I wish you have a little power to modify those windows. I know that you're doing it up on the first level, the garage level. I noticed the different that you have changed the windows. I don't know how much room you have structurally to play to make it more symmetrical, to make it more contemporary, more define the elevations of that wall. That would have been a better solution. Also looking into if you're going to work, you're working out those windows on the top floor, maybe introducing some corner windows too, to like Frank Israel or Frank Lloyd Wright. It's kind of there's no character. I know contemporary is a tough design. You want to go simple, but at the same time, you have to bring the qualities, the material, and the articulation, and all that. It's the simplicity, which I do not see it at this moment with this design. The railing, I like the material you chose for the railing, but also I would like to reduce the use of that. It's too much. I mean, we have like it turns into like a Motel 6. Personally, I think you need to break it down somehow to reduce the amount of railing, introducing exposed and not exposed. That way you could break it up. Color, I'm not sure. Color, what you have there, what Melka introduced, I have no problem. I think that's it for now. Let me hear what my colleagues would say.
I think I'm also in the same comments from me. The entry tower, it doesn't work for me. It's a little out of scale. It looks a little silly from certain angles. I think if you just integrated it more with the deck roofing, or if it became part of the roof that exists behind it, maybe that same line just continues to bring that mass down. For me, that would be okay and just sufficient to kind of resolve that issue. I think the gable roof over the garage doesn't really work with the horizontality that you're trying to achieve with all these layers that you're creating by creating these bands with the deck, and how the railing is a banding horizontal, and all the bands that you have within the stucco. So having this little gable just becomes like, why is there a little hat on this part and everything else is this really strong horizontality nature to it? I know you already have that roof. You're trying to keep it the way it is. I don't know what the solution there is other than redoing that. I think for me the other big thing is that the bands that you're creating with the fascia, it just seems too wide to me to create. It creates like this layered cake look where I think it wants to just be a band that kind of defines the railing and sets that apart, but doesn't create another, layer of decoration that goes around the building. It just wants to be like a real simple thing that just becomes part of like the reveals that you have within the building. Again, I also feel like that because it's an existing structure and you really can't do a whole lot with the volumes and the form, with articulating that and trying to make it contemporary with what you're given with the openings that you already have, it does become this sort of simplified, more commercialized version of a contemporary style, where if you were doing a residential project and you're doing it in modern contemporary style, then you could introduce more interesting items like the corner window that JP suggested, or little elements that are different, that they're not just an opening in a wall or a box. So the finish is fine for me, the height of the door, everything else, that's fine.
Well, appreciate all the comments, and Sky, I think you had several really good points. The problem is the way I see it is that the structure came first, then the design. Always the problem comes, how do you convert an existing structure into something other than what it wants to be originally, the intent was. Creating a modern architecture is simple, but yet it's very difficult because the simple details and minimal amount of articulations to the structure creates that strong architecture that you want to achieve. The structure, the bones of this building was that. And from there to convert it into a modern, so-called modern architecture or structure is a great recipe of creating a building that will make people not hate but have a different opinion about modern architecture. So a lot of the features have to be very carefully placed. The roof over the garage has been said many times. It came before. This is, we're talking to you. I mean, I should turn around and talk to them. The dialogue is closed, and if we have some time, we have several projects. I'll open up if there needs to be any. Well, let me finish, and then we'll see if we're going to go the direction, whatever direction. Before that, I'll let you speak for 30 seconds. What has been managed to be created is a 2,100 structure that looks like a 4,500 square foot structure. Creating these horizontal lines and stacking them on top of each other without creating any variations, any reveals, you started taking out this deck area, started reducing the mass, and what it started doing, when I'm looking at this thing, it started to create this asymmetrical facade that would allow you to reduce the mass by leaving the deck as is, but by creating this band or whatever that is that you've tried to create, it's fighting that. At the same time, the placement of the sliding doors, they're not inlined because the openings were there before, so we have no control over that. So I think a lot of thought has to go into not just maintaining the structure, but yet what the intent of the design is going to be. I think the start of the basis of the design, I think it started in completely on the wrong end of the spectrum. We're here to review the design, not the structure. If the design needs to be reviewed, the design needs to be well thought of and completely. And if the decision is to minimize the amount of impact to the building by reducing amount of openings or maintaining the openings, then you have to go back and see how you can use that to your benefit rather than creating a larger, heavier mass that would in this scheme is to us is very apparent. Use of different materials, minimizing the amount of, maybe inlining some windows, creating other openings there, creating, and it's the base or the bones of the structure is very difficult to the direction that you've taken, because the start of the structure it's in the wrong end. So I like the handrails. I like the simplicity and the cleanness of the handrails. But in overall, I think it's missing the details, the effort that will make this a simple clean, contemporary architecture. So that's what it's missing to me. And then at the same time, how do you incorporate the structure, but yet forget the openings, look at this as a clean slate, use the existing openings, maybe fill in certain portions of it to create some more simple, cleaner lines, more in-lined, and create a less of a mess. And I don't know, I mean, this is the path that you've chosen, but I think what you've created is a lot larger than what it looks like. So, do we have any other additional comments?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm looking at in this perspective image is when I talk about contemporary architecture, a lot of times you create things based on an element, their forms, their volumes. So we say, like, this isn't just a box and we're putting in rooms into it, that we want to create spatial experiences within it, but it's not decorative. We're not decorating it up, we're just creating spaces. And when I look at this and I see that you're trying to break it up by stepping it back, maybe these things, they pull out and become a volume that becomes part of the space. You could play with the depth of this vertical element here that then, pops up, and then this wraps around it. The top, the deck is, I don't know, separate from it, and then the thing on the top of the deck, has a purpose. It has a shade structure within it. It has louvers. It has cable rails, so that you're adding more ideas of modern design into that piece, and it's becoming its own element versus just I'm also continuing the same idea of this horizontal band that goes around the whole building. Ideas like that, you could bring that ideas into the building instead of just making it so simple. That it has a little bit more specialness in each of in some places that breaks up the volume.
I think what it's missing. I mean, you could keep that box. What this project needs is the roof. Needs an interesting roof design, or something interesting, simple. Those simple and interesting roof design to tie this box together.
Yeah, I mean, if you just at least got rid of the hip roof and did more of the flat with
I think
the
it's the
banding.
roof, that the three elements of the roof design, it's throwing the project, the whole thing away.
Well, I think in combination of a lot of things,
Entrance.
Creating the horizontal bands, the reveals in the stucco, the roof,
It needs to simplify it.
openings, everything kind of comes into each other. But I think one approach that it's recommended is that, you've taken the step of taking it to the university and having it as a studio project. And I don't know what year studio it was.
Is it architecture?
I don't know. It may have been in engineering. But I think a case study of doing certain case studies of hillside projects will definitely help trying to come up with an architectural style, because I think that's one of the things that it's missing. And I think what's driving this is the whole concept of maintaining the structure.
And there's so many published architects that,
Yeah.
there's so many books, published architects with this type of...
I think there's probably two elements for me. I'll be real quick. I think the idea of and emphasizing horizontality, I think is fine, but I think it sort of beckons or needs some two-story vertical elements to play off it to see that. And I think you have opportunities where there are walls that are two-story, and if that was sort of a backdrop, there might be an alternate material to, again, play up how the horizontality comes into it, so that there's a little bit of play with that. I think it's just too much of the one and not enough of another. But because I think there's some elements in there that could do with a second material that I think would be helpful, like an inner wall material. So, but I think what you've done with the trellis on the roof deck, I just think that needs to go over the garage or that element.
Before we deliberate or we have our motion, if you have 30 seconds to, if you can
Just a
keep the
couple of
time,
quick
please.
comments. My original design did include a flat roof. The gable roof was removed, but we were asked to put it back to stay in conformance with some planning issues. So unless the design review board gives us clearance to proceed with a flat roof.
Well, the design review is telling you that the design that you have doesn't work. So it is your responsibility to if you're going to maintain that roof, figure out a way to make it work, and that could be one option. Next time, if you decide to do any other project, I would recommend, if you're having this type of a trouble, that coming back 3 times and have all this, you can come as a preliminary review. We can definitely give you advice preliminary and then not as a final review. So,
Okay, the other question I have for you is there's somewhat of an urgency to proceed because the Building and Safety wants completion of the project as quickly as possible. And before you deliberate, if you could at least give me a direction in terms of, does the Design Review Board agree to the presence of a deck, aside from all the other elements which I'm willing to modify? Because if you can give me that, I can proceed with completing the structural elements.
I don't think the design review is willing to do that because we haven't seen your final design. So I don't know with your final design, and I'm speaking on behalf, for my colleagues here. None of the features can be approved independently just for you to proceed. We're going to look at the entire package as one design. So we cannot approve certain sections of the building, say you go ahead and start this section, whereas the other we have an issue with. So I think we want to see the whole thing put together. All right?
Okay.
Board Member Malikian, I'd like to just respond to the height issue. The issue is that because if it's a flat roof, the project, as you know, zoning requires a maximum 32-foot height limit. When you have a minimum roof pitch of 3 and 12, then you can increase that with an additional, I believe, 3 feet. So originally, the zoning for the original project was a little different because it was measured to plate height. So it had a completely different computation compared to current code, which is when the building comes out of the ground to the highest point, that's how we measure roof. So that's where the issue was. And so that's why the applicant came up with this design, because...
But even with this design, then it doesn't work.
No, with this design, he complies based on what he's provided with the
Because he's not
maximum.
changing the roof, because roof
Right,
is maintained.
exactly.
Roof is maintained.
But he's giving us a dimension of 32 feet,
And that's fine,
okay?
right now, yes.
Okay, so if we...
But with the previous design, for some reason, it was much higher. It was like, I believe it was about 35.
Okay, so
And he couldn't have
if he
35.
go ahead and flattens that roof, we're okay.
If he can maintain an overall height of 32 feet, we're okay.
My question is, in these elevations that he's showing, do you measure to the lowest point?
From the lowest point that it comes out of the ground.
So does he measure to here?
From the lowest point that it comes out, yes. If
Giving us 32 feet.
Okay,
from
yeah,
the
but don't
lowest-
go by that design, because remember, the zoning for that one was very different when we measured height, because the zoning laws were different.
Okay, but what I'm saying is this portion of the building is there. Now,
Right, so we still have to, when it comes out of the ground, that's where we measure the height now.
But he's not measuring it from the bottom, because he didn't include the lower retaining wall.
You're changing the
He didn't
zoning.
include the retaining wall on his west elevation. To the west elevation, he didn't include the retaining wall, but he's got 32 without the retaining wall.
I'm
Yeah, just to clarify, I think
Retaining wall's right here.
Milka's, what
It's not
Milka is
shown,
trying to
that's the retaining
say.
wall.
Right.
So the dimension would go from there.
right.
So it
So
wouldn't
why
be
is it
32.
So what
32 doesn't,
doesn't mean anything?
Doesn't mean
Is
anything.
32 feet on the plans doesn't mean
does not mean
anything?
anything.
Well,
understand your
we'll
question.
review to make sure that it's in compliance,
Okay.
but just to clarify, the addition, staff really tries to refrain from advising the applicant in any design, oh, just do this and you'll be fine, just do that and you'll be fine.
Right.
The applicant chose to put on this pyramidal roof in order to attempt to comply with the height limit
That's
as
fine.
it is now.
But he's not showing the
Okay.
retaining wall, which would add the height.
question
That's
Well-
is, if I may,
Yes.
there's a retaining wall here. So this dimension is from the lowest portion of the roof dimension. What I'm saying is that,
We'll have to review,
don't measure from here?
No, if the retaining wall is detached from the structure a minimum of 5 feet, we will not include that retaining wall. It's hard to
In
tell
plan.
from the photo, and that's why I personally went there to take a photo, because it was hard for me to depict whether that particular, because there's 2 retaining walls that you can see at the rear, left side, as you're facing the property off of Palmer. There are 2 retaining walls. There's one that's, my understanding, structurally supporting the deck, the lowest post of that deck, and then there's another wall, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, there's another wall in front of that, but I'm not sure on the dimension. If it's minimum of 5 feet, then we don't include it, because it's considered detached.
And the lowest point
Correct.
would be the dirt of the planter.
Exactly.
It would be the dirt of the planter going
And
up.
one way to address the issue in terms of height would be to increase the earth to, do you see what I'm saying?
Where I'm going with this, I'm not questioning any of these.
Okay.
I'm not questioning. All I'm trying to figure out is, with his comment, and what we're trying to say is that maybe one of the possibilities are reduce the height. We're not saying.
Oh, right.
So, if we're saying the option is to reduce it, so
No, but by the action of reducing it, you are modifying the plan, and then it could be modified and then non-conforming.
Correct.
You would lose your rights to it once you have modified
Right, because right
it.
now it's
He's
legal non-conforming.
Right.
Correct.
Because
As soon as he makes it flat, it would then have to conform at flat.
Right, exactly, because
Yeah.
before height was measured to the plate
well, can we
line.
do an exception because it's exactly
Please grant zoning variances right now?
that's a challenge. I don't want to.
Okay, all right, well, then you can't really modify that roof then,
All right.
unless he does a variance, it appears.
So can we read the comments, or who does?
Well, first of all, I have everyone's comments, but there has not been specific conditions from
Okay.
a board member that is making a motion. So that I need first.
I'll make a motion for redesign with some conditions and comments. I think the amount of railing and balcony need to be reduced. You guys can chime in at any time. I think they ought to explore an alternate materials and think about doing some two-story elements as a means of breaking up the horizontality, although we were trying to generate horizontality. I think there's a play between the two that could happen with that. Investigate the roof again, find out the height. Be nice to know the height. It appears like, I don't know this, but it looks like you can't really change that roof unless you're going for a variance. So, I mean, just have that in there as something to investigate. I personally like the balcony. I think that's an interesting element. I wish there was more of it happening in the house where some of the house could pull back and it would become trellis structure. There's a mid-level push-in that would be great if that showed as a trellis structure rather than roof deck above. That would be open and add interest. The entry element, I do think needs to come down.
So should we include the 5 items that staff included?
Yeah.
as part of the condition.
I believe so.
yeah. I think we're repeating.
Okay, so we are including the 5 items that was included.
Yeah.
I think you covered several of them.
Yeah, I think that's all good.
Okay. Is that clear?
Yes, and I have a few others that I've been taking down as the conversation went on. So if I may read some of these back, and you can let us know if they should be included also. Consider interrupting the bands so that they're not continuously wrapping around the project for greater impact. I think that is also reflected in one of the staff comments, but I think that comment that was made states it more clearly. Consider different levels and/or different types of roofs. Providing a variety in the railing would help to break up the mass. The railing is too continuous around the whole structure. Is another one that we heard, similar to how Mr. Gallegos articulated that. Other design elements should be introduced for visual interest and for overall improved design. That was something that we heard from a couple of board members. One of the items that we've heard from board member Milliken, which may be useful to state in the conditions, if the decision is to reduce the impact to the structure, the design should be more carefully considered. The existing structure does not appear compatible with the current design. Consider having some flexibility with the openings. Some may be closed, others may be opened. Does that reflect
Yes.
the board's feeling? This is maybe reflected in some of the comments already. The design of the project could have more variety than is currently reflected in plan, rather than having rooms prescribed in a box. That was something that I've written down based on board member Sakai's comment. Not sure if that on its own, outside of the context of the comment, makes sense to you?
Well, actually, I'm looking at the view from Palmer, and there are the different levels have elements that shift in and out as per the original design. But in this new view from Palmer of the new design, it looks very flat, like it's just one depth of spot. I think that what we're trying to say is that if it's an element that pops out, it has to make sense. As an element, a vertical element, that it's something like it's a fireplace, or it's a room, or it's it's carrying from floor to floor, and not just. To me, it felt like this was just a simple box, but it's not really a simple box. There are undulations going on in the patterning of the different floors and the different rooms, and he could make those into elements that then become, as you were saying, like maybe the material changes or the color changes. It creates a specialty. It creates a difference in texture or color, or and then breaks up that monotonous elevation of just these same.
So if I could repeat back in idea what you're saying, if aspects of the function or interior design were better reflected on the exterior, that might provide additional variety and architectural interest.
Yes.
Okay.
Could we request, or at least, ask for
A model.
a 3D, well, not a model, but at least a 3D of some kind, either axonometric or
Oh, absolutely.
of
Well,
the
there
rear,
is
of the
a,
rear, of the rear,
okay,
Study model.
of the rear,
okay, so either a perspective
or axonometric. It could be.
or axon of viewed from the rear, but even preferring a physical model.
Maybe
Yeah,
a massing
yeah.
model, computerized
massing.
model, I think it will be, the student could.
It'll actually help you in some sense because you'll see that there is more going on than you have on your drawing.
I have
Yeah, yeah.
Massing model.
Okay,
Okay.
can we have a
Second.
Yeah, was there a second? Nobody seconded it.
second?
Oh, just one, I'm sorry, one more piece. We want to make sure we have everything included before you finish voting. Did we also hear to make the west elevation more three-dimensional, or is that a comment that we could even
I think it
consider?
actually is three-dimensional. It's not shown on the drawing. And
Okay.
And it's not
The
emphasized
massing,
in
I
terms
think
of what it's
one thing that
massing.
is missing is the floor plans, and how maybe a kind of a cut section of the face. So when we're looking at the plan, maybe to have a plan view here, kind of show how this, if they're not going to provide the three-dimensional, perspective or.
Well, we can require that there be a three-dimensional perspective.
All right, we need to
Okay.
move on.
Great,
So-
thank you.
All right, so roll call, please.
Motion by Board Member Garagos, return for redesign. Second by Board Member Valadian. Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Valadian?
Yes.
Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Chairperson Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries, return for redesign.
Are we ready for the next one? Um, 4315 Lauderdale?
Should I get started? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property for case number 2 PDR 2010-061A is located at 4315 Lauderdale Avenue. This design is a first-time submittal for final review. The property is currently located at the corner of Lauderdale and Altura Avenues. The subject property faces, the front of the house faces Lauderdale, however, the frontage of the property faces Altura because of its width facing the street. There is a 970 square foot home currently with a detached two-car garage built in 1947. The proposal is to add another 580 square feet to the house, which would be towards the back end of the house facing Altura. It is designed to be at least 25 feet away from Altura, and that would be the front setback, and more than 10 feet from the interior property line. This project is exempt from CEQA, and there are no environmental constraints. Staff recommends approval of the project with 4 recommended conditions. I'll quickly go over those for you. Number 1 is set back the addition from the existing wall to create a visual interest as viewed from Altura. 2, provide wood siding at the gable of the addition facing the interior of the property. 3 is to use block frame windows with wood sills to match the existing, since the proposed windows are vinyl. And lastly, to provide landscape design for staff's review prior to issuance of any building permits. I'm pretty much finished with my quick presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available. Applicant is also in the audience.
Do you know what the required front yard setback is?
25 feet.
And it's from Altura because it's the short.
Because the legal frontage is Altura, not Lauderdale. Although it is also, I believe, 25 feet at least from Lauderdale as well.
Okay. And the wall is proposed to come out.
And there's an existing wall that will be demolished, and I have received a phone call from the neighborhood services that there's also an existing shed of some sort, tool shed in the back, which would also, there's an ongoing code enforcement case which is not shown on the plans, and that also will be removed. And the wall that's currently encroaching towards Altura is proposed to be removed and relocated to connect from the addition to the interior of the property towards west.
Okay. Any more questions? And we have Ricardo Flores. You state your name and address, please.
Ricardo Flores, 8726 Cherokee Drive, Downey, California. On the items that you mentioned, I think it's we could do that those items with. I don't think the owner would have a problem. How much would it have to sit in?
We will make that determination if we need to.
Okay.
And landscape, from a landscape design professional, landscape architect. Can
We'll
you-
bring in a landscape.
Okay.
Landscape plan.
Any questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I'd like to actually talk about the landscaping because there's a lot of land here, and I think it would be nice to have the landscape plan to respond to. Since I don't have one, I can't really respond to what you're going to be doing. And I'm also wondering if this is such an expansive landscape. At what point can we say the landscape plan has to be part of the package before it comes to DRB? And I know this is probably not the time to talk about that issue, but maybe we can talk about that at a future meeting about requiring people who have a certain percentage of evaluation, or if it's a size a consideration, would have to have a landscape plan as part of the package.
If I may quickly chime in, the proposal will be taking place over an existing concrete pad, and the actual numbers of the live vegetation or landscaping will not be altered based on the drawings and what's been presented to us. That's one of the reasons we didn't regionally ask for a landscape plan, but I think it's an excellent idea to make that a practice, maybe.
Even if you're going to be doing this whole back area will be affected by the construction. So if we're going to put something new in, what is it going to be? You're saying that there's a concrete pad under the...
Based on the information provided by the applicant, currently there's a sort of an outdoor patio area of some sort, a concrete pad where the building will be located eventually.
The proposed addition.
That would be, the addition will go over an existing concrete pad, which will probably be removed, new foundation will be
Right.
put in, but there is no landscaping where the addition will be taking place.
I just find it interesting that
More or less.
I don't know all these little elements that are here. Is there anything else that's on this property that we don't know about?
Shed
No.
is not shown.
The shed's not
That's-
shown, the concrete pad's not shown.
Well, because that's where the addition is going.
That's the addition.
If I may, sorry to interrupt your deliberations, but Board Member Sakai, you bring up a very good point. This is something that the staff is consistently struggling with, projects where applicants very often will say, oh no, all the existing landscaping will remain. We go out there and see there's really no existing landscaping to speak of, ask for a landscape plan, don't receive it. We can, if the board wishes, we can talk about this a little bit afterwards, whether the board would like for us to agendize a conversation on some direction on when staff should require a landscape plan as part of the package. We could make that as part of our submittal requirements. It would be more predictable for our applicants and easier for staff to administer.
And
So
more
we can.
productive for the applicant when they come to us, that we can address their landscaping now, and it won't be on staff later on to guess if it's
It's
appropriate.
very helpful to have that discussion. If I see nods, then we could just go ahead and
Please do
agendize
that.
that discussion. Then we don't have to talk about it anymore tonight.
So the
Thank you.
landscape's fine. Because I don't know what it is. And I think for a simple building addition, it's fine for what it is. I think it's, he's agreeing to all staff's conditions, so I'm,
Okay.
no comments.
Yeah, I think it's a simple addition. I think what's unfortunate is that Altura is kind of that front side, and I'm not sure that just moving it back is really enough. I sort of think it would be great to kind of wrap the porch around, put some doors on the living room or that dining area out onto a little porch. I don't know if that strikes anybody's fancy, but I think it could really help. If you pulled it back, you kind of wrap the porch around, not all the way around, just around actually just the existing portion of the house.
Are we talking about the porch in the front?
You're talking along Altura?
Add a porch.
To add a porch
add a
along,
porch.
Add a porch.
on the
I
Altura
see.
side?
Sort of extend
So existing porch and wrap it around.
Because I think there's not a lot happening in that sort of the front face of that house. Is that south elevation?
Well, you have a fireplace in that corner.
Well, look, just see who salutes. I don't know.
Any comments on the...
Clarify what you were trying
Well,
to
One of two things. Either you
push
could
back the addition and
right. What I'm saying is
Push
you
in
could
front
actually
of
do.
it,
You could
correct?
probably do the porch and not do the pushback. I mean, that's.
well, it would be in the setback if we were talking about the elevation facing
But not
south.
bringing, actually starting from the existing porch, wrapping it around just the living room section, just the existing portion of the house.
But you
Not the
still
whole
have
south,
a-
not the whole
But that-
south facade. Just to kind of give it a face to Altura.
I think I understand now what you're saying.
Just an idea, throw it out there, see what happens.
Strange to me.
Other than that, I think it's fine.
All right. So, Vladia?
I don't have a problem with the addition, except a comment to the designer, to the client, just overlook the closet. I don't know if it works. Just for you to revisit the closet.
Well,
I don't know what to say about this.
There's a little bit of siding on the existing house, so there might be one thing we could do on that south elevation to add a little interest, is to bring some of the siding around that's on the one elevation.
okay. Any comments on the conditions that the staff was
I'm okay
recommending?
with that.
You're okay?
Leave it.
Okay, as far as the pushback, do you I personally, I have no problem with keeping it.
I don't either.
I don't, I just think it's, that one facade needs something going on, so. I'm just saying if there was a porch element that was added on that side, for me, I could leave that as an option for them to do.
can.
Add a porch or move
Well,
it back.
I could see if it was like, you could just see it wrapping around, but then there's a fireplace there, and how does it engage the fireplace? And then you've got an issue with maybe like, you can make the room
thing
a little
is-
darker because you got porch on both sides that covers all your windows. And
I think the intent is you're trying to somehow reduce the span or the mass of that. I mean, wrapping
one
the
facade.
porch around, the only way you can access that porch is to come out of the door and then just walk around and sit there.
No, I'm saying, if you look at those rooms, it's a living room, dining room,
But there's no
Those open-
doors
Design the
leading out to
proposal.
the porch.
You're fighting against the proposal. We can't design it.
Yeah, so I really don't think
I mean, look at
we
the
can
closet.
just
I'm not
jump-
making the motion this time, so somebody else make the motion.
And actually, if this was my property, I would probably want to expand the back and take advantage of the full floor area ratio and be able
Well,
to, really do a nice big deal with the thing. And
It's not for us to
it's not for
design
me
it.
to design. It's
I
on my property.
think it's a modest addition.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think the conditions, I'm fine with it.
Somebody else make a motion.
Okay, I move to approve the project with the staff conditions.
I'm not sure about the setback, but
Dated
that's my
on,
personal opinion.
Okay, because I don't need that either.
All right, so what I will do
With
is,
siding for
Mr.
gable.
Garagos added two
Lock frame
comments, which I
windows.
will put in as recommendation instead of condition, to
Sure.
either wrap the porch around or wrap the siding around to make that,
Yeah.
Right.
which would be the south-facing facade, to make it a little more architecturally interesting.
It'd be nice if that siding band was part of it, if you guys could go for
Do you guys
that.
care if we set back the building? Because I don't think
It's a long facade with nothing going on.
It's not that big of a building. Okay, I'm not going to include.
It's your motion.
I'm
It's
not
your
going to
motion.
include the setback for the addition.
How do you feel about the siding, adding a little siding on the base?
That's a consideration,
Okay.
and use block frame windows as a condition, and landscape design by landscape design professional as a condition.
Okay, it's your motion.
So we have a motion made by Ms. Sakai to approve the project with staff's conditions minus the step back, which would be a recommendation, and then add two more recommendation by Mr. Garagos to wrap the siding and wrap the porch
Not
around.
recommendation, consideration.
Okay, I apologize for the terminology. Consideration to wrap it around. And that's the motion. Is there a second?
Are we eliminating the setback, the addition from the existing south face?
That becomes a consideration.
Consideration?
Right.
Okay. And then it's also consideration, provide wood siding at the gable.
Correct.
Speak up.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Second what?
This is a roll call. Mr. Baladian?
Yes.
Mr. Garagos?
No. Hadn't done a no in a long time.
Ms. Sakai?
Yes.
And Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3.
I wish you all the best, though. I wish you all the best.
Are we ready for the next one, or should we take a,
That's to you.
Because it's not the no that I needed to.
do you want a 2-minute break, or
You wait
or
for the
should we
no.
just go on?
There's no
Okay,
little projects.
2-minute recess.
There's no little projects. They're all important.
Okay, we're on. All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The last item before you this evening is case number 059-A. It's a review of a proposal to construct a new 5,950 square foot single-family house on a 3-acre site located at 3645 Deer Pass Road. Project is located in the ROS zone, and let me go over with you what's on the board. I do not see the pointer, so we've got the elevation drawings. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Bull. All right, closest to are the elevations. The north elevation is what you will most see from the surrounding built environment. The south elevation backs up to the cut slope, and then the two other elevations. The site plan is here. Mesa Lila Road is here. Deer Pass stops right about here, and then the private driveway starts and winds up to the site, which is right here, the graded pad here in the house. This is the first floor plan, second floor plan, and roof plan. Landscape plans, and then photos. Okay, the project site is currently vacant, but has been graded with a building pad and a driveway in anticipation of construction of the single-family house. As I mentioned before, the residence is approximately 5,900 square feet and contains an attached 650 square foot garage. The first floor is 4,980 square feet. The second floor is just under 1,000 square feet. Access to the site will be taken from an extension of Deer Pass Road. This street becomes a private driveway for the proposed project. The graded portion of the site is approximately 46,000 square feet and is located in the southern portion of the lot. The proposed project generally complies with the Hillside Design Guidelines and the Single-Family Neighborhood Design Guidelines. The project, or the residence, I should say, follows the topography of the site and the slope. The two-story portion of the residence is recessed from the first floor, and while the house is basically composed of two rectangles, the building planes vary within those rectangles. The proposed landscape plan is consistent with the landscape guidelines for hillside development. There are approximately 110 additional trees, including 22 additional coast live oak trees proposed throughout the site. The landscape plans call for trees to be a minimum of 5-gallon size, which is typically smaller than the size normally proposed and required by the board. The board may wish to consider increasing the sizes of all of the trees or certain trees based on their locations. There are some trees I noticed this afternoon in putting up the plans that are larger than 5-gallon, but the vast majority are 5-gallon in size. The proposed residence and existing building pad are most visible going south on Pennsylvania Avenue. To soften the visual impact of the existing grading in the proposed residence, the board should consider planting additional moderately tall trees north of the graded pad, as well as requiring additional landscaping to further naturalize the view from this street, from this viewpoint. The Whiting Woods neighborhood is mostly composed of moderately sized homes on moderately sized lots. Most of the homes are one-story, contain a low-pitched roof, and are horizontally oriented. And while the proposed residence is contemporary in style, it has these sort of ranch-style characteristics. There is a triangular roof projection which interrupts the horizontal focus of the residence and provides an angular element that is staff believes is foreign to the design and adds unnecessary mass to the project. The board should look at this design element closely and consider an alternative design which builds on the horizontality of the house without creating a bulky feature, and that feature is above the staircase that leads to the second floor. Parcel map 1606 created 3 lots in this area, 2 of which were residential, 1 of which is permanent open space. While the proposed residence has a different floor plan and is larger in size, staff believes that the building envelope of the current house is reasonably consistent with the building envelope shown on the parcel map, and that information was included in your packets. I didn't post it on the board, though. Prominent finishes on the residence include siding, CMU block, glazing, and shot blast stucco. There's also a stained glass element near the family entrance to the residence. The proposed material for the residence generally reinforces the contemporary style of the building and are simply applied. Additionally, the residence is relatively unadorned, so simple. Staff recommends approval of the project with the 3 conditions in the staff report. Do you want me to go over those? I sort of highlighted them on the in the presentation. You fine with just reading them? Mm-hmm. Okay. Additionally, do you want me to give you a few more seconds? No. Okay. Additionally, we did receive a letter from the Whiting Woods Association, Property Owners Association, this morning, and it's a similar letter to one that we received on a project that you reviewed last fall on the neighboring site. A couple of the conditions, or a couple of the conditions that they're proposing in this letter might throw you a little bit, particularly number 7. There isn't a green wall on this in this project. Additionally, they reference a curved main structure. So, and that was really the focus of the previous project. Additionally, you just got copies of the sort of the introductory email, and I'm trying to find that now. But don't have it, so let me just try to paraphrase it. Mr. Hill, who is the president of the Homeowners Association, in his cover email to me, did mention that they were concerned about the size of the house, and that you got that email this evening. So that I think that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Do you have any questions?
I do have a question, only because there was several correspondence on it. Can you just clarify the issue that the number that was on the parcel map and whether you're bound or not by it, and speak a little bit about that?
Okay.
Just because it had been addressed in the letters.
Yeah, we also we addressed it in the last project as well. This lot, as well as another lot that you recently reviewed, plans for a single-family house, as well as an open space lot, were created by parcel map 1606. And when you are going through the parcel map process, you're required to provide some floor plans and some house plans, floor plans and elevations to ensure that the parcels that you're creating, in this case, a reasonable single-family house could reasonably be constructed on the lot that you are creating. So the applicants did this at the time, and this was 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It was a while ago. I wasn't involved in it, but they did provide a basic floor plan and some basic elevations that were in your packet. The parcel map referenced on this site the house size being roughly 5,300 square feet. And so that's where the homeowners association got that number. Now, it's really, and as I mentioned in the staff report, staff believes that what is being proposed tonight is relatively consistent with what was shown on the parcel map.
It was 5395.
Okay, 53.
Is that what it was? I'm just asking.
Oh,
Yes.
I can double check. It was 53 something.
Yeah, it is right.
Yeah. Staff, as I mentioned in the staff report, believes that what's being proposed tonight is relatively consistent with what was shown on the parcel map. And it's
So
really...
you're not bound by the approval of the parcel map to that number. Exactly. I'm just clarifying
No.
for everyone who's
No.
listening because the letter was written. That's
Yeah,
what I'm-
you are not. And it's really up to you to decide whether
Whether this is too
what's
much.
being
Which is
proposed
too much, yes.
is consistent or not, and whether what's being proposed tonight is
Right.
too much or not.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question on the views that this person is referring to for the landscaping. I guess I'm confused as to which street, like, who sees the house, the property most?
Well,
Which side?
Well, that letter,
in staff's opinion, when we looked at this, the house is right here, and the graded pad's here, and the driveway's here.
It's going up to the...
And this all goes up. Houses around here will have very limited, if any, visibility of this house because of the topography, because of the distance between this and this, because of the vegetation. There's some houses over here. The topography sort of goes down and then goes up again. There's some houses over here that I think will probably see it. But what staff really noticed was Pennsylvania Avenue is basically right here, and it's like this. And when you go south on Pennsylvania Avenue, the site will be very visible. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's roughly right here, Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, it doesn't directly go down, but it's right about here because you can see the pad directly. So the north elevation right here is what I said is going to be the most visible to the sort of the developed area. The people who live over in this area will be able to, this elevation will be visible. So.
thank you. Okay, Mark Ganji. State your name and address, please.
Hi, Mark Ganji, 229 East Palm Avenue, Burbank, California. Thank you very much for seeing our project tonight. I'd first like to thank Stephanie Reich and Roger Kiesel for their help as we've put both of the projects together on this in this subdivision. I'd also like to recognize some of my hardworking staff, Maria Rokstro and Tiffany Dell'Aquila, and also our president of our company, Frank Ganji. And also I'm joined here with my clients and future neighbors, Mark and Kelly Atwood. This project is really the final part of a development that began as was a 9-lot subdivision, was reduced to a 3-lot subdivision where 18 acres of land were dedicated to the city as permanent open space. The subject site is over 3 acres and the pad is over 46,000 square feet. The design of the house is contemporary and is also really influenced by its isolated location and its opportunity to have an indoor-outdoor lifestyle on the site. This design was presented to the Homeowners Association, the Whiting Woods Homeowners Association last fall, and it was very well received. They felt that its horizontality fit into the neighborhood character and that it was also complementary to the other house that's part of this subdivision. Also, at the last meeting, we met with the Glendale North representatives that were here, which thought that they might be able to see some of the house from far away, and also from far away you have unincorporated La Crescenta, which may have a view, as Roger mentioned, of the front north part of the house. Again, the house has a indoor-outdoor relationship that's influenced and reinforced by the layering of its spaces and the permeability of its walls. It has items such as a loggia, which runs across the main space, which is here. And that is built out of post and beam, and it allows protection to the main space so that it can be more open and reinforce that relationship. And also it has transitional spaces such as a freestanding wall that's a block, which is here, which has deep punched openings and again allows both privacy from the bedroom spaces and the ability to have an indoor-outdoor relationship to the exterior. The design is elemental in its approach to its zoning of public spaces in the front of the site as it transitions to private spaces at the rear, and also its closed nature from the west of the site, which is where the driveway and main entrance is, to its open nature to its private spaces in its rear yard. The house is primarily single-story with open spaces that connect to larger exterior spaces and views. And the second story is composed of the master bedroom only. And it's oriented towards the rear of the site so that it visually blocks the cut slope, which is here, from the outside spaces of the house. The colors of the house and materials were chosen to blend into the existing native landscape. In fact, we did some sampling of the native landscape out there and came up with a color palette. And that's basically how the house is put together. I have a series of exterior materials here. We have this material, which is a shot-blasted concrete block, which is the concrete block that's proposed, and it'll be laid horizontally, and it's also of a 4-inch height so that it has a more of a residential character. As well as a sample of the vertical siding, which is a reverse board batten, and that's here.
So you are going to use that block instead of the one that you're showing?
Yes, well, yeah, that was the sample, right?
All right.
That was a sample of the
So
way.
that's what it's going to be used. Okay.
Right, and we actually worked quite hard to prepare this material because it's cementitious siding, which they don't have a great vertical board, and we were able to create a reverse board batten combination. And then the last material that we brought to show you is the roof, which we're looking at a rock ballasted roof in this area. It's visible primarily from the master bedroom, so we wanted something that could be seen as really part of the landscape as opposed to a roof surface. And we created a very simple sample that we thought just to illustrate what type of character that would be.
Are you intending for that to be like a deck for the master bedroom person? There's a door shown on that.
Right, yeah. The master bedroom has a wraparound deep recess, which is shown here in the model. But that actually area of roof is just visual. So you don't occupy this area.
So those rocks are just for us to see, but they're actually going to be a lot finer, and that's...
No, that is the idea, that it's a rock ballasted. Right,
okay.
correct. It'd be similar to that in character. From the conditions that the staff has proposed, we do take a slight exception the stair that leads, is a transition to the second floor, and it's placed in the center of the building. And from views that we've looked at from both our renderings, the model, and from the story poles that are up, it is barely visible from the exterior. But we think that we thought that it was a very nice way to lead the stair. It has the same angular relationship as the stair, and it was much less visually intrusive than a more orthogonal shape that would stick out into the single-story volume. So we're actually quite pleased with that and think that it's actually complementary. It's not horizontal like the rest of the house, but it's part of the element of the design. Also, in regards to the landscape, the current site has significant mature trees that were protected during construction, and the client has chosen to add a significant number of new trees. The sizes that are listed on that, just to make that possible, they're listed as minimum sizes, so that we would have the opportunity to enlarge trees as we saw that we could. And the landscape architect had some issues with on some of the slopes that we're trying to planting mature trees that were in the 36-inch box that were requested. So anyway, it's really done. It's not a requirement to add trees to the site. We're not required to add any. In fact, there's quite a few that are already there. But we're doing so because we think it's a really nice thing to do. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you very much for your time.
I have a question on the trees on the drive, along the driveway and along the north property side. I think staff made a comment that was a very visible view of the property. I don't see not adding any new trees to the site on the driveway north approach, or are you?
Well, we're adding landscaping within the defensible space, and that really has been designed to provide a transition from the native landscape to the house pad, and so.
Are you adding trees?
Can I see what you're?
Yeah, along the driveway. So if I'm coming up the driveway,
Maybe we should go up there and then you can just walk up.
Yes, if I'm coming up the driveway, it looks like these are purposely placed. Are these new trees that you're adding? And then along here, these two trees that would actually provide some visual, blockage of the house. Are these existing or are these new?
Right, these are new. The ones that are numbered are existing.
What are your numbers?
So you see, like, these are from the original tree report. And then also.
Right, so these don't have any
These.
numbers on them. These are
Right,
new.
because they're new, so they're done by symbol, so you have to kind of find the.
That was inconsistent. I'm sorry. I was like, yeah, okay, those are labeled.
Yeah, so we are planning on adding trees there. Of course, the site has a wonderful view, and where they're saying it's very visible is actually from very far away. So as you get up towards the 210 freeway. The highest level of visibility is really to my house, and it's just barely visible, and I think it's the two houses seem to be very complementary together.
Okay, I'm going to just match symbols then. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. We have one more card. Jack, is it Baron Golds?
Good evening. My name is Jack Barangolds. I live at 3610 Mesa Lila Lane, Glendale. I am representing the Whiting Woods Property Owners Association. Almost everything I had to say got taken care of by, by Mr. Kiesel, because the main question I was wound up to come was to ask how come what we thought was 5,200 square feet in the parcel map, leaving out the ambiguity of whether that includes or disincludes the garage, because I wouldn't know, and I'm not asking, got to 6,600 square feet if you include the garage. And even if we do 5950 versus 5365, which Mr. Kiesel tells me is what's the parcel map, sure he knows rather than Brock Hill, my president, that's still a 23% increase in the floor space. And I just bring that to your attention. One wonders, the association as represented by the applicant, we like the design of the house. We're very happy. We were, worried a long time ago what was going to happen. I assure you that we're not complaining about this. And so I was just wound up here for that one thing, and I'd also like to apologize for items 7 and 9 in the letter that from Brock Hill that I just got today, too, that don't apply. That's called cutting and pasting and embarrassing yourself.
Just a quick comment on the square footages. If the association is going to use the 6,600 as the number that includes the garage, then theoretically they should add the garage to that 5,390. So you're probably very close. You're probably looking at about 600 or 700 square foot addition. So if you're going to compare apples to apples,
I was just doing that now because they wound me up to. No, I was comparing it fairly. I was doing the 5950 to the 3265, which both numbers without garage.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's what we
23%.
typically do. We separate out garage.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I don't know.
No worries.
But it's 23% on the house floor space, and I guess I'd just like to say it may be that the parcel map is just a wag, but one day that's going to come and bite somebody. So maybe that's the only purpose I addressed you. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sit down.
Mr. Ganji, any additional comments or anything, or you're okay? All right. Okay. Have we had a chance to read the letters, both letters that we received from?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which one? This email?
I'll start, that's fine.
Okay.
I think it's nicely done, a nice project. I have a couple questions, the comments that staff had. I'd be generally in agreement. I think I'd want some clarification from staff later about which plants really are required, and if they're adding additional plants or trees, I don't know that you could really sort of force them to upsize what would be considered additional trees. So that we could get some clarification on. In general, I think it's nice. I think the triangular element, and I was sort of a mannerist, so I like the idea of follies. So I could understand the idea of that being a folly. But to be honest, I really think it's too small in the model. I don't think your model actually did it as high as it actually is showing in the drawing. But I actually think it would be much stronger if it was a stone element, because I think when you think about the mountain and taking away the mountain to put that addition there, and there was some remnant that was the triangular element that was stone. For me, I think that would be much stronger and much more consistent with what I think are 3/4 of the house. That triangular element with a colored plaster is much more consistent with the south elevation, which is your least successful elevation. So I'd be less inclined to have something that's very showy and different be similar to your least effective facade. So, but I could be flexible on the shape. I think that's a fun element, and I would like it. I think though the strong horizontality, and I think that's probably what staff was tying into, is that it would be really great if it was a stone element that was horizontal that kind of jutted in that element. So I could see it being a very strong horizontal element too. But I think if it was there, I think it needs to be some kind of stone. That would be my preference, or along the lines of the shotcrete stone you have. Other than that, I'm supportive of it. I think it's a good project.
Okay.
Oh, do you want to talk about the trees? Are there
When someone requires a new house, when someone is proposing a new house, they are required to provide us landscape plans. And so it's our job to evaluate the landscape plans to see whether they're adequate or not adequate, and and then give you that recommendation. Our recommendation was, or our analysis was, the landscaping is, consistent with the landscape guidelines. All the zones of plants were good, but that you might want to consider upsizing some of the trees or all of the trees based on the views, and also based on the fact that typically in a normal type development, you wouldn't consider a 5-gallon tree as being adequate. Granted, this is not what you typically see in a new single-family house. It's a 3-acre site. But staff felt it was important to bring that up at least. And I can also tell you that we had the same comment when you reviewed the previous single-family house, and you kind of ignored us. So,
No, actually, what I'm asking though, we take all your comments very seriously. No, I think my question really is, do you think they're proposing more trees than would be normal, and thereby why penalize them by upsizing them? Or do you think?
Well, that was part of
in terms of your analysis.
Yeah, that's part of what we went back and forth with. How many new single-family houses propose 110 trees on the site? Not very many. At the same time,
they know that. Do you know the number or not? You know the number. Okay, it's checked. Okay,
It's going to cost you more
Yeah,
building the house.
if I may,
at the same time, it was also driving down Pennsylvania Avenue.
right.
This, the visibility of this site and this house is going to be very, very prominent. So, it's a balancing act,
Yeah,
and that's
okay.
what we.
And if I may, staff doesn't require or not require any number of trees. It's really for the board
Well,
to.
you're feeling for it. Like if you thought it was a lot of trees or not.
Yeah, and here it's the existing pad and the cut in the hill is, as Roger said, it's extremely visible. It ends the axis of Pennsylvania.
Right.
And the trees, frankly, the house is simple house, low-lying to the landscape. The trees would help maybe repair visually what has been done to the mountaintop.
Right, and I think for me, a lot of that, when you look at that hillside now, it's more ground cover and shrubbery as opposed to trees. So, that would be where I would sort of head, because it's really, you just want to sort of paste over green over all the cuts. So, as opposed to trees, I'm thinking, are they sufficient with shrubbery and
Well,
ground?
shrubbery is not going to cover that granite hillside, in our opinion. But April is probably
I'll leave it all for
better
April.
to discuss what might or might not grow in the granite hillside.
Yeah, should have gone.
Okay, next. Yeah. I like the project. I'm supportive, and I like the plan, the floor plan. It's nicely drawn, and I'm going to move to the model, and I would like to invite Mr. Genji to come over here because I want you to see what I'm talking, because I have a beautiful view here of the model. Because before I go there, just look at the corner, the north elevation, where the boys room
Okay,
here.
uh-huh.
That area, focus there. Okay.
You want me to stay here? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It's a very simple project. I like what I'm trying to get. I like this element over here, the wall.
Turn that one around.
Can you turn that?
You can turn the other
Turn that one around.
Podium.
The podium one.
I like this wall. It's beautifully done with the punch, with the roof flat. Giving at. Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right.
You have two language. The roof, you have a slanted roof here, and you have a flat roof here. I don't have any problem, but there's two languages. What I'm struggling is, somehow, you guys comment on my comments, I feel like you have the private area, and then the public area and the private area. What I'm having problem is at this location, what I see is you have the roof coming slanted that way, you get the light in. Somehow, I wished maybe, I don't know if you did, have inverted the roof on this side the opposite way, or to bring the language. I feel like this house was there and this was an addition later on. I mean, I see it that way. Tell me if you see it wrong. I would like to see, I want to hear your comment. I feel like this has been added. It doesn't look, it's tying together. But how, there's one thing to investigate is, maybe, I like the flat roof here, this design. I like it, and I like this too. But somehow, you have to decide as the architect which direction you want this house to the marriage of the public and the private area, the marriage. I think this element, I like it and I don't like it in a way. So I'm not that comfortable with this sculpture kind of. I look at it. I don't think so it's helping the design, because you have this horizontal, very smooth roof, very relaxed, and then this aggressive slanted stair comes into it. I don't think so it's tying it. What I could see is the stair which is kind of it's kind of at the location between the private and the public area, have it more like Mr. Giragos said. I like to have it more as a stone, earth color from the surrounding, more stone type of element, and more like horizontal. Maybe take this wall design that you have, it's kind of free floating, and have it in a bigger piece here, sliding, and then it becomes all dressed up.
Perforated
with the larger square with the type of stone that represent the site that you're using, and that way it will tie it together. I think it will be, in my opinion, a better project. Overall, I love the project. It's beautifully, the floor plan is nicely done, but I'm having problem with the roof, which way you want to do to put it, make it perfect. That's it. I love the colors, everything else is okay. I would like...
Speak? Yes.
Can he speak? No.
We're going to keep it to the end.
Later on,
We can
give
just-
him a chance to comment.
Thank you.
We'll leave it at the end and we can comment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a different angle of this model, and for me, the stair element is like a ski slope. It's just coming straight down, and I don't understand.
I think the architect added that piece to
Something.
create discussion for that little thing. I think it was just a tactic.
I kind of want it to be bigger to make it more of
It's a
an
three-card Monty.
item.
It's a three-card Monty.
Right, it's like the folly that you kind of go, oh, that's something to talk about. I actually want it to be bigger to make it more a part of the building. Like it sort of feels like it just kind of added to the model. Even in the drawings, I thought it was a fireplace or something because I saw this vertical element, and I thought, oh wait, that's not a chimney, that's a window, and it's where's it facing and what's the view, and I was getting a little confused by the whole thing. So I think it's not successful to me because it didn't just feel right. It felt maybe forced or out of place or not quite there. And when Mr. Belladian pointed out the roof angles, I didn't even notice that really. I just thought it was sort of an angle of perception of the model that I'm getting. But you're right, the roofs are all these different angled planes. It's like one's flat, one's angling the other direction. They do want to work together, and I think they don't work together now. That joint where you're pointed out, really, it doesn't work in the model. It does feel like that house was built and this piece was added on to it as I'm looking at the model. So, I don't know if that's in the drawings. There's an element in the roof that's adjacent to the stair that looks like it's sloping down, and I didn't know, what slope it is. So, and that's this part, the whole square area here. Maybe that's more flat, but it's kind of confusing as to how much of a slope that is, and if it's on the model like how it's just shown flat. It doesn't quite engage the public area's roof line, I think, as well as it could. in terms of the landscaping, I mean, this is, if I'm like, this hillside, the way it's cut, it's very austere, and it's obviously you vegetated the rest of the site, and it's interesting that you didn't vegetate that portion of your model because it just stands out as a cut mountain, and it's screaming for vegetation or something to say, go away, or it's this huge backdrop that, your house kind of goes away, which is maybe what you're trying to achieve, but all you see is that cut mountain. I think that, since it's bedrock, like you were saying, I don't have a soils report in front of me, but I think if it's bedrock and it's difficult to plant in it, going with native shrubbery, planting them small, and planting them before the project really gets, far along, will help your cause. You'll have the vegetation on the hillside, and it'll help stabilize it as well. So, I'm not going to suggest putting a 24-inch box oak tree on there. I think, if you go to 5-gallon, 15-gallon toyons, and I think you have some Carolina cherries. You have a nice range of material to pick from, and probably adding a little bit more tree material in small sizes to kind of vary the planes. But I would say that shrubbery would probably do it for me in terms of concealing that that's a cut mountain. The plant palette is fine. I think what I'd like to see, you have an element in the back which is called a where'd it go? Gravel retention pond, and I think that it'd be nice if you could upsize that and make it more an element within your landscape to kind of bring that element, integrate it more into the design of the landscape, so it becomes a feature versus just sort of a pocket that's between the two mountain ranges. I think that would be a really nice element to tie into this idea that the water's coming out of the mountain, it's coming down into your property, and how does it go through your property? It looks like you have golf courses set up right now, like miniature golf courses, where you go from one pad to the next pad, and you have landscaping around it. And I think that if you could tie them together or somehow make it more unique, or something that just has a little more interest to it, that would help your cause. It's just a suggestion. It's not a requirement. And I think, you're proposing these new trees on the north elevation. You have 2 trees you're proposing. One of them is deciduous. I don't know if that's going to help your cause. Maybe make them both oaks and call it a day, and move that ginkgo closer to the other one to kind of have them speak to each other. Then you have all oaks coming up the driveway, and it kind of makes one statement. The 5-gallon trees that you have that are close to the driveway, that are close to the house, I would like to see those upsized, because they're going to go in when the house is done, and you're going to want to screen the house to provide that instant vegetation. A 5-gallon tree just doesn't do it for me. So we're gonna go for at least 15. But the rest of the planting, what you have on the hillside, I think, a 5-gallon would be the only thing you can get in the ground. And if the landscape architect felt like that was it, then I'm comfortable approving that. I think that the idea, I think we had mentioned this on another project earlier last year, of doing them before the building gets built, because that area will not get disturbed by construction, to put those trees in the ground in smaller containers and put all that shrubbery in the ground in smaller containers. Then you have what you're portraying in this model is more indicative of what you're going to be having when the building is there from day one. What my other comments? I think one of the comments that some of the what's the comment on? Well, one of the comments that the gentleman from Whiting Woods Property Owners Association had about using the rainwater collection system to use it for irrigation is a good suggestion for you, especially with the water usage rates and restrictions that we have these days. Since you're going to be collecting the water on the site, and you have a lot of property here, to find ways of reusing that water and retaining it on site versus having it go through. It's a good idea that I wanted to convey to you that he had brought up. I think that's all I can think of for now. Maybe I'll think of more later.
Well,
I think it's really a nice project. I think you've done an exceptional job, and I think that you did that absolutely right. It will complement your project across the driveway or across the hill right there. I do agree, and I've always looked at elements that are added on to any structure, that if you remove that, what it will do to the project. Is it going to help, or is it going to, it's something that it's like an attached element. So I think that angled piece is to me, it looks like an afterthought. It doesn't look like it came from day one and that was the intent. I think the overall design, the creating this flat plane and post and beam structure and these open trellises and everything, that's the concept of the building. And creating that angled piece there, I think for me, it's really an out of place object. And personally, I disagree. I don't think it needs to be a stone structure. What I like to see there is that the glass or the light well that you've created, the intent was to bring light down the stair shaft. That can be taken a step further and introduce some new material there, such as, maybe a cantilevered, flat cantilevered piece that covers that staircase and create that horizontal effect, but then wrap that whole structure, glass channels, or I don't know if you've seen them, these glass structure that kind of wraps that whole staircase around, so that becomes a kind of a light well. At nights when you turn the light on, that whole thing is like a glowing element there. But there's many different options there, but I think that angle piece is something that it's shouldn't be there. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't really see a site plan per se that gives all the information. One thing that I'm concerned about, and you may have a much better solution, or you may have thought of that, but I don't really see that, is that when you actually drive up to where the pad is, the way that I see the model that it's built, these trellises that actually come out in two locations, the cars have to maneuver around these. What are the dimensions? What are the clearances? Do we have enough clearances? Does it make sense to have that? Does it not? I mean, to me right now, when I look at this and when I look at it on the plan, there's no dimensions, so I really don't, probably a 10-foot wide section there, you have to be very careful driving through that little section there. So I think that needs to, a little bit of a thought needs to go through. And then randomly placing these columns, whereas you want to have this rhythm where you started creating that along the driveway side, but as you come to the east side, these columns are randomly placed, and I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is, but then you have the support, the trellis support, it's continuing in a rhythm. So I think there's some details that are there. And these are just fine, minute stuff that I think will make a lot of these elements look more thought of than the way I see it. But in overall, I think it's an amazing project. I think the site's situating the building the way it is. I think it's incorporating the linear section or the longest section of the path. So I think it's located properly. The driveway, I think the entrance. So, and I'm glad that I saw the block. I didn't even see that because the image that you have on the rendering, that was a no-go, because I think that itself, if you create the horizontal bands and then I don't know, the reveals that are in there, probably going to have a recessed reveal there to create that horizontal. So I think overall, I think it's a very nice project, and I agree, Mr. Boulagian. I think that's a good point. I'm not sure how they're going to resolve that. And then looking at the model here, you create this little hole there that I don't know how you're going to create. How you're going to waterproof that little, the flat and the sloped area, and then you have that opening there. But But overall, I think it's a great project, so let's go ahead and entertain or listen to our comments. And if we have any specific direction. I think we all commented on that stair shaft.
I saw it as a light well as well, and I think for me, if this was an isolated site without any neighbors to complain about views, if it was a light block that came up and it was a long rectangular piece, and then it could glow at night, that would be the coolest thing. But you know, if someone's driving down Pennsylvania Avenue and seeing this thing glowing at night,
well,
maybe
I think
I don't know
that section there. I think it needs to follow the horizontal planes that you've created. I personally, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know if you guys agree with me. And that itself could be a higher element there, kind of wraps over the top, so it becomes kind of the key between the high, the medium, and the low, and so it becomes this you know, the attachment that kind of pulls everything together, and that whole thing becomes a kind of a lit glass, all glass enclosure or something there, that it, rather than an enclosed element there, it becomes a light well for the entire section of that house there. I don't know. I mean, these are just thoughts, but
maybe that comes down and turns, it becomes the hall and the entry, and so as it turns perpendicular to it, it accepts the roof, and that ends the angle, and we just move from an angled roof to a box, an item, an element that's vertical, and then the other roof is flat, comes into that.
right.
I think that element should tie the whole
Yeah.
building together.
So I think
Yeah, I
the
think it should be
architect,
the
as I
element, the
said,
key.
the architect did this.
It's the butterfly in your
He
furniture.
was trying to get our thoughts all into one point. I'm sure we're missing something somewhere and hiding
it's-
away, and we're trying to.
It's like joinery.
Things
I want to hear his
tactic.
response.
You know, like when you do a butterfly in furniture, and you kind of have that piece that joins two pieces of wood together, and you kind of say, well, that's
make a big
that thing
difference.
that's interesting. This is your interesting little element that giant.
I'm constantly trying to find something somewhere around, and somewhere it's hiding.
I make a motion for approval.
Well, why don't we? I
would
think
like to
he
hear it.
had a comment.
Yeah,
I think he wanted
like
to say
to hear his
something.
comment
So
about
I don't
our
think I need
comments.
to open it. So it doesn't. So
I want to see.
You have 30
I wanna hear
seconds.
his comments and opinion. What are you going to do?
Right, well, your point, I think, is well taken from where you're situated. There is no project higher than this point, and all of this land behind us has been put into permanent open space, which the city has promised the neighborhood they will never develop. However, in really thinking about this piece, whoops, you're really here or higher depending on where you are. If you're on Pennsylvania Avenue, where we're talking about seeing the project, you're possibly miles away,
But let me cut
mile
you.
away, 2 miles away.
Mark, before you head, I have no problem it's seeing it. We're never going to see this project. I'm looking at it as an individual project without the surrounding. So
Right.
justifying it's for the house itself. The comment was the house itself, not the people in the surrounding. If they're going to see this roof slanted or not slanted, is it going to make a difference or not?
Right, okay.
It's for this house,
Well, I
the
think
product.
I had a comment about the view from afar. If it was a light well and it drew your attention to it, so if you're not going to see it,
Yeah, it's so, that
Yeah, but-
element's so small. you're
But I'm not
gonna-
designing for the surrounding. My comment was strictly for the project
On-site.
itself.
On
Yeah.
site, okay.
being-
So, even on-site, you're basically at the same level as the house. And one of the things that we did that we thought was important is the pitched roof, which is the formal area of the house. It actually has a vaulted roof, joins with the roof over the private wing. And by keeping this area flat, we're able to continue the line of the fascia all the way across. Then it's completely flat. So then the freestanding wall that we have below it is the roof floats above it at an even level. And that's something very visual on the...
But the roof over the boys' rooms could be a shed pitching back, right?
Well, you know,
No, because of the depth. I mean, we'd have to come up higher than this. At this point, we're right at about 8.6 on the interior.
But how did you? I mean, that
It's a pretty low pitch, though.
that Okay, well,
I don't know, it's between you and the client. For us, it's my comment, I mean, it's a suggestion.
It'll be a suggestion.
A suggestion, I mean, it looks like you have to sit down with the client, look at this model before you, I mean, you might, I don't know, whatever you guys, at the end, you might leave it as is, it's your call. But I feel if it was my house, whatever, I will feel a little bit uncomfortable in that area. Because you have this,
You don't,
this,
you
and
don't
that.
sense the dissimilarity of how those roofs work in that area?
Well, I think they're dissimilar.
I mean, in terms of how they're,
It
how they're working.
doesn't, it doesn't connect.
Purpose.
Honestly, it doesn't
Yeah.
connect.
Purposefulness to that. And just even on site, I don't know if you guys were able to make it up to the site, but from the story poles,
Yeah.
you see that that section of where that air tower is actually really really not too visible
I know.
Even-
from
it's the
from the
detailing.
actual pad.
yeah.
So maybe conceptually, maybe is what
Well,
you're
it's
thinking.
because it's such a well-designed project. I know you spent so much time. It's not like the other projects, because of, like Mr. Malikian said, it has to do with the details, the location of the columns and all that. You want to have to basically what we're looking at to celebrate that structure, the frame. You're celebrating. You're not covering it up with stucco. So it has to have some kind of a sense of architectural, the grid, organization, why you put that post there, and it must be justified.
Okay, we're not going to
Yeah.
have a debate here, so we're just wanted
So
you to
it's a
comment.
suggestion,
Okay,
for you to
so
think.
let's go ahead and.
I have a motion, I'd hear a second.
Okay.
so.
I second it.
Okay.
But with comments,
With the
I mean,
conditions.
any
We're gonna- now we're gonna hear the
conditions?
comments. We're gonna
Okay,
hear the
so
comments.
let's.
All right. I will do my best. All right. The first comment we heard was redesign the triangular element above the staircase to better integrate into the house. I'm sorry. To better integrate into the design of the house, consider facing this facade with shot blast stone or make it a light well. How does that sound?
I think we need to give them direction of whether we like the slope or not, and
I think
it's a
it says
condition,
I
right?
think it's.
Is it a condition?
I think it's
Horizontal.
consistent. I think it needs to be horizontal. I think it's
Yeah, I think it needs to be
consistent.
horizontal.
Yeah,
So-
I agree.
There's three horizontals, sorry.
I cannot
I tried.
stand this.
Redesign the triangular element above the staircase to be
A horizontal element.
Rectilinear.
Rectilinear,
Be
yes.
rec-
rectilinear.
the linear
Just like Stephanie said it.
and better integrate into blah 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 blah.
To accept the different roof conditions and also to be an element that ties the two the two-story and the one-story public building together. Or the private and the public portion of the buildings together.
Do you agree that, do you want to talk about the material of it or not, or leave that?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Redesign the triangular element above the staircase to be rectilinear and better integrate into the house to accept the roof conditions.
To better integrate the roofs, I guess, I don't know how you would say it, to better,
Entry.
Triangular elements should be rectilinear and better tie the public and private portions of the buildings together with their different roofs.
Bingo.
And that is a condition, right?
yes.
Okay.
As to
Even though
material.
it's your motion.
That's right.
I'm pre-voting.
Okay, the second one, and this one may now be incorporated in the first one, is restudy the roof above the family entrance of the residence. And I think that's what you're referring to. On the floor plan, you see another, a smaller entryway closer to the garage. That's where the two...
Trellis.
Well, the trellises that are shown there, it just doesn't, I mean, I can't
I'm not,
really-
no, I'm not talking about the trellises yet. I'm talking about
What are you talking about?
this area right here.
Oh, that's what,
That's what we're talking about.
Elijah
That's
was
what
That's
that
what
whole
Stephanie
area.
just mentioned.
I think Stephanie's
Is that
comment
Stephanie's
covered.
comments now? Okay.
That whole thing needs to be revisited by the architect
Okay.
and the client, I guess. At that time, if they're happy, they're happy.
Well, they like the slope thing.
Is it a condition or a consideration?
The slope is a condition, but automatically, once they rework that area, they're going to rework that roof area too, probably. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
I think.
Rework the roof area to the west side of the
North elevation.
North side of the...
north side of the stair element.
We're saying because the public comes into the private.
No, I think they're trying to
Just as
address
elements.
the slope flat and the angle
Oh, okay.
slope. This
So what we're going to do?
And then the way-
Addition or a suggestion for the slope versus flat?
They could just rework.
I think we should just put a general comment that there's an issue there, try to solve
Let
it.
that be
Yeah.
a consideration. They're going to rework
Yeah,
together.
I'm
They
sure
may
you
want to.
can solve it.
So
And-
consider reworking that.
Consideration.
Okay.
It's entry and over the entry and office.
And then the way Roger read back the piece of the first condition, it also included for the stair element a comment about the material, stone or shot blast. Should that be included as a consideration or a condition for the material of that stair element?
But put a consideration.
Yeah, since it's my motion, I'll say it. I think the material is a question, because I think it could be an open element or it could be a stone element, and either one I think would be.
But it shouldn't be stucco.
No, I'd rather it not be stucco.
Okay.
Not be
So
stucco.
that helps us clarify.
Not be
Thank
stucco.
you.
Okay. Provide additional vegetation on the building pad,
No.
The cut
On the
face, I
cut
think.
face.
On the cut face.
on the cut face. Okay.
Well, more shrubbery versus, I think they have just a palette, like an oak companion palette and a disturbed slope palette. I'd like to see more native shrubbery
On the
In-
cut slope.
on the cut slope. And if they could introduce more trees, native trees on that cut slope as well, but they can do it in small size containers. And
Okay.
if they could do it before the construction of the building to get that vegetation growing, that's, I guess I'll make it a consideration.
It's not a matter of getting it on before the construction,
do
but
it?
how do you irrigate that? And
Well, you could just put in these gel packs per tree, or you could install your irrigation system for that area.
Is that a consideration or a condition?
Consideration. Because actually the picture...
Consider incorporating the gravel retention pond better into the landscape plans.
That's a consideration.
Is that okay? As it's
Consideration.
worded?
What?
Okay, that's as far as I got. Let me look at my notes.
I also like to consider replacing the deciduous tree on the north elevation. with
Right. Is that a consideration?
oak. It's a consideration.
Consider eliminating,
Replacing.
replacing the deciduous tree with, you said oak, right?
With the companion tree to the one next to it, which is,
Okay.
I think, an oak, coast live oak.
any comments on the square footage? And it seems like that was the
I'm
first
okay
item.
with the square footage.
And also the height, which part
fine
of
with
the
that.
consideration.
No problem.
Very low height.
Okay.
Okay, I also heard upsize the trees adjacent to the driveway.
Yes, to a minimum
Okay.
15 gallon.
That's a condition or consideration? Because I would say it's a
Well-
consideration myself.
They're going to go in like, this tall. There aren't that many
Trees. Well, the ones on the driveway, you're saying?
along the driveway, I think those are the only ones. Along the, I don't know if you call it the building pad, on the building pad?
I think if you could define where it is, I could go along with it.
So on the
I'll add it
building
to my
pad.
motion.
If on the building pad, we could say a minimum 15 gallons as a condition.
How about
Because that's just-
how about the driveway? Because that's what I heard.
Along
I heard
the
the trees
driveway,
along the driveway
we
need to be
have.
upsized. I didn't hear anything about the.
Well, I'm looking at all the trees now.
Yeah, no, I'd want you to be
15.
specific if it's part of my motion.
Okay. Let's see, this is a
It's a lot of trees.
citrus. Yeah, I'm okay with along the driveway. He's got these since 15s already. That's a 24. So I think it only affects like 4 trees.
Okay.
Sounds good.
What are these?
Okay, upsize the trees along the driveway to 15-gallon size. Okay. There was also reference to condition 11 on the homeowners association letter.
Oh, that was a consideration to
Okay,
provide.
so consider,
Can you read that? Oh, I
It's
don't-
the rainwater collection system
Right.
shall be dedicated to irrigation, especially on the facade, which I don't know what that means, which will have the benefit of relieving the homeowner of water cost
I don't
burdens.
think that applies to this.
So I just think since they have a retention basin, they're already thinking about rainwater retention, that they could make
I
rainwater
think that's a
retention.
consideration.
Yes, a consideration.
Consideration.
okay, so
Part of the-
consider
they could- retaining
a
rainwater for
rainwater
their
collection
irrigation.
system.
Irrigation,
Okay,
or to include, to provide that water towards the irrigation system, irrigating the property.
okay.
We also heard some comments about the placement and rhythm of the trellis columns. Is that something you'd like us to add as a consideration? Not, okay, so we'll be silent on that. Thank you.
That was all I had.
Moved and seconded.
Anyone? Second? Second? Anyone?
Second.
Second?
Actually,
Can we roll
who first did it?
Mr. Guerrero.
Is there a second? Bellotti and Mr. Bellotti.
Roll call,
Okay, a
please.
motion was made to approve the project with conditions and considerations. This will be a roll call. Mr. Geragos?
Yes.
Mr. Bellotti?
Yes.
Sakai?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, there were a set of minutes
Yes.
that if were given to you, if you could review. And
Everybody had a chance?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no problem with the minutes.
Make a motion to approve minutes of February 17th, 2011.
is there a second?
A second.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the minutes of February 2nd, 2011. Roll call, Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Sakai?
Yes.
Mr. Bellotti?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Was there a second set of minutes?
Thank you.
No.
There was only one set of minutes.
Okay.
tonight.
Okay, next meeting's
All right.
And in our next meeting in 2 weeks or just after that, we will agendize a discussion on when we should be requiring landscape plans together with your submittal packages.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was used, this was,
Oh, this is for the parcel map?
this was for the parcel.
Oh, okay, because I didn't understand what these drawings were at all.
Yeah.
Like, over and